Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel. My name is Colleen Carroll, and I serve as the NX Unite lead here at Nexus Marketing and will be your moderator for today's session. Our topic today is nonprofit case management strategies to further your mission, and I'm really looking forward to learning from this set of panelists. But before we jump in, I do have a few quick logistics to cover. NX Unite by Nexus Marketing serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission-driven sector. On NX Unite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cause-driven podcasts. NX Unite also hosts webinars, demos, and of course, panels with experts such as the lovely folks here with me today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. So if you are joining us live, please submit your questions during the session. We want to address the topics most relevant to you and your team, but we can't do that unless you submit those questions. If you have come into today's session with a topic in mind, something you're really hoping we're going to address, it is totally appropriate to submit those questions right now. The earlier we get those questions, the more likely we'll be able to address a larger number of them and that will address your question in particular. So feel free to use the chat function or the questions tab to submit those questions. If at any point you're having any technical difficulties or have any logistics issues, please feel free to reach out in the chat. My colleague Malou is here under the Team NX Unite username and will do her best to assist. So give a little holler in the chat, let us know what's happening, and we'll figure out how to get you back on and enjoying the session as quickly as possible. I did also want to mention that this panel session is being recorded. So if you get to the end and the insight you heard was just so fantastic, you need to hear it a second time right away, that is wonderful news. It's going to automatically be in your email inbox at the end of the session. Give it a few minutes after we wrap up and you'll have access to the recording in your email. Also, if you have any friends in the industry who you're like, can't believe they missed it, they needed to be there, that session answered every question that they've ever had, please let them know that they can still access the recording on the NX Unite site. Just go to our on-demand section and they'll have access to the recording as well. Finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I do want to give a big thank you to our audience, whether you are watching the recording or joining us live and letting us know in the chat where you're calling in from and maybe even what your weather situation is. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us and for learning with us. We really are glad you're here. All right, to begin with our introductions, I'd first like to introduce Estefania Mulvi-Videla, creator of Opportunity at Combvi. With over 12 years of experience in community development and social justice, she's committed to helping marginalized communities achieve greater civic engagement and empowerment. Estefania, I'm so glad you could join us today.
For sure, glad to be here.
Also here with us today is Jen Taylor, founder at DeepY Design. She has created technology solutions in the public and nonprofit sector for over 25 years and is the founder of DeepY Design, a firm that helps nonprofits who use or want to use Salesforce for far more than fundraising. Jen, thanks for joining us for another panel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Finally, here with us today is Sherry Cheney-Jones, founder and president of Shore Impact. A researcher and expert in social impact measurement, Sherry believes in data, metrics, and accountability. She is a thought leader on public sector evaluation and applied organizational research. Sherry, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Colleen. This is truly an exciting topic.
Wonderful. Well, we will jump in and get started. And Sherry, I'm actually going to have you start us off with our first question. How does effective case management contribute to enhancing the overall impact and sustainability of nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, nonprofits are obviously in the business of changing lives and changing circumstances, first and foremost, especially those who'd be interested in talking about case management. And when we think about what is the crux of our work, it is tracking and measuring who we're serving, what we're doing for them, and hopefully adding a piece related to how people and communities are better off as part of our case management solution. So, I think from my experience, case management is how you measure your mission, so you can communicate that to your stakeholders and donors.
Sherry, thank you so much for starting us off. Jen, over to you. Thoughts on how effective case management contributes to enhancing overall impact and sustainability?
Sure. So building off of what Sherry was talking about, really our case management, when we talk about effective case management, we're really, I have to go to that grad school, series of courses where it's like, what do we mean by effective, right? And one part of effective is being able to tell our story, being able to remain in the communities, serving the people that we're meaning to serve, serving them well, serving them with integrity, while at the same time communicating that story to funders so that we're building sustainability and having a place that allows us to do that in alignment with our mission really is a key to being able to do that sustainably, to do that well. So effective can mean lots of different things, but to me, for effective means that structure, that operational system that we're using to deliver our services is hitting all of those notes, hopefully.
Thank you, Jen. All right, Estefania, I'm sure you can guess what question's coming your way. Thoughts on how effective case management can help impact and sustainability?
For sure. So no nonprofit starts because the creators or members of the team don't care about the community. And something we're all too familiar with is the limited resources that we have in the nonprofit world. By having effective case management, we are able to best use the limited resources that we have available. So we are able to make the most bang out of our buck. And with resource allocation, we are also able to track the outcomes and be able to see the impact overall that our nonprofits are having in the community, therefore helping us serve more members of the community and furthering the organization's mission.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, Jen, I'm going to have you start us off with our next question. How can nonprofit organizations effectively align their case management strategies with their broader mission and goals?
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate being asked to lead this question out. But I think from a technologist standpoint, actually, I would like to say that the technology is the last piece and follows the kind of strategic and analytic work that my colleagues on the panel would probably lead out with, right? So that thinking, the strategy, making sure that you're really understanding end to end what you're trying to deliver, how that what your activities are, and I'm gonna step back because that's what other people know a lot better than me. But then at the end of that process, making sure that you're choosing a solution or set of solutions that can allow you to sustain those decisions and deliver on those decisions with integrity would be where sort of a technology piece would come in.
Thank you, Jen. All right, Estefania, over to you. Thoughts on how we can align our case management with our broader mission and goals?
Well, I want to start off by saying I'm not judging anybody, but a lot of organizations have very messy mission and vision goals. So the first way to be able to align this is to really, really narrow down how we are looking at our mission and vision. Is it representative of the community? Is it succinct? Because I've seen missions and visions that are pages and pages long, and that is hard to align. So once we have a good, clear mission and vision, the easiest way to do it is to get stakeholder buy-in. Who are our participants? Are our team members aware of the whole process? Is the community aware? Because if we don't have that buy-in, then the alignment becomes close to impossible because no one is invested in it. So it makes it that much harder.
Thank you so much, Estefania. All right, Sherry, over to you. Thoughts on how we can align our case management strategies with our mission and goals?
Absolutely agree with 100% of what everyone said. So I'll kind of give the listeners very practical tools that I think they should be doing before they ever approach any technology solution or technology partner. And the first one is, some people might be rolling their eyes, some people will be like, yes, I love these, but is to create an organization-wide logic model. So that is to create on one piece of paper, what resources do you have? What makes you unique? What makes you special? Then what are your outputs? So what do you do? What are your activities? What services do you provide? What, is it case management? Is it training? Is it delivery of meals, right? So really be very clear on what do you do to deliver on that mission. And then ask yourself this question: why do we do what we do? Why do our funders fund us? And why do our participants participate? Because the answers to those questions then become your short and medium-term outcomes. And so list those out and make sure there's a linkage between the resources you have, the services you deliver, and the outcomes you desire to achieve for your participants. And once you have that framework down, when you're looking to vet different technology solutions to help you track and measure this, now the technologists have much more clarity in how to help you leverage technology to achieve your goals.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I saw a lot of love for that logic model. Anyone want to jump in on that, or are we ready to keep moving? Awesome. We'll just enjoy it then. All right, Estefania, I'm going to bring this next question over to you. In our increasingly digital world, what do you see as the role of technology in optimizing case management for nonprofits?
So I want to start off by saying that we have to embrace technology. It's not going anywhere. It is here to stay. Let's embrace it and make our lives easier. By using technology, we are actually, the most important thing that I have found is we are able to achieve accountability. So we are not only accountable to ourselves, but we can be accountable to each other and to the community. If we have the right tools, if we have the right data, we are able to streamline these processes and make the most efficient process, work for us. And with the digital tools that we have, it reduces the amount of back and forth that we need to have, not just within our teams, but also within the community. As an example, if you have a case, you're able to communicate perhaps through text message, perhaps through email, perhaps through automated phone calls. And it makes it easier to meet people where they are, to be able to send that accountability and transparency, as well as it helps bridge any language gaps that there might be.
Thank you so much. All right, before we hear from our other panelists, I do want to let our audience know that we have had a poll go live where we've asked you all, how effectively does your nonprofit use tech to support case management? See, some of you have already found that poll, but if you haven't filled it out yet and you would like to, go down to your poll tab at the bottom and you'll be able to fill it out. All right, Sherry, over to you. Thoughts on the role of technology in optimizing case management?
Absolutely. Well, I think that technology is definitely an advantage. It's a competitive advantage in nonprofits. I tell boards this all the time. If you're the last thing you should ever be doing is vetoing investment into technology. For one thing, we know there is a worker shortage within the nonprofit sector, in all sectors, frankly, but definitely in the nonprofit sector. We need in the nonprofit sector our people to be doing what they are there to do best, which is interacting with, serving the customers. They don't need to be spending hours upon hours upon hours tracking things in Excel or Google Sheets. So when we leverage technology, we're allowing the people to do what the people do best and technology to do what technology could do best, especially when we think about funders and the shift in funding and how they're asking for outcomes data, they're asking for impact metrics. Well, if we're having all that data being collected in various places, we're now taking resources away from our staff and making them, like the countless number of hours I hear executive directors are up in the middle of the night trying to look at spreadsheets. It's ridiculous. And I don't know that there's any board members on here, but if you're listening, send this to your board members. We need you out there telling the story, fundraising those executive directors. Let technology, your case management solutions, do that work for you so you can do what you do and shine mostly.
Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, Jen, I'm super excited to hear from you on this one. What do you see as the role of technology in case management?
So yeah, I'm very excited to be talking about this because this is our heart and soul of what we do, is kind of bringing these ideas and bringing these needs, trying to bring them into organizations with transparency, with a lens towards thinking about not just how do we capture data. Right? We know that databases and spreadsheets and Excel and whatever are good repositories, but there's so much more than that. And to me, the biggest thing is moving away from the conversation about databases or technology tools as the way we get reports to funders. Yes, absolutely, that is critical, but also thinking about some of these other items that folks have touched on of, is it actually supporting me doing my job? Is it making me a better case manager? Is it allowing me to more powerfully, ethically, transparently serve the people who are in front of me? What does that look like for my organization? So is it giving me feedback into my job? If I'm a program manager, or if I'm designing program, am I able to ask questions of the technology that help me improve the program? Without staying up to the middle of the night, wading through spreadsheets. So the role of technology, as everyone has said, is it's here. It's not going away. It can be used very powerfully, and I think making sure that whatever solution you're choosing is not just aligned with the data you want out, but also the services you want to provide. Is just a really important part of the conversation to aid your case managers in doing that critical human-to-human work.
Thank you so much, Jen. Checking in on that poll, we asked you all, how effectively does your nonprofit use tech to support case management? 50% of you said that you use tech, but there is room for improvement. 30% said tech is underutilized, or we do too much manually. And 20% said our tech is fully integrated and streamlined. And to that I say, congratulations. If you have any tips, share them in the chat. Awesome. All right, Jen, I'm going to stick with you for our next question. What are some common challenges nonprofit professionals face when adopting new case management systems, and how can these hurdles be overcome?
Sure. So it actually kind of ties right into what we were just talking about, right? And that effectiveness. A lot of times I find that the decision is made without engaging the people doing the work. And there's for lots of reasons, and that's very understandable. And a lot of times it can feel overwhelming, or people are very busy. If you're doing the work, you kind of don't have a lot of time, right? You've got other jobs. And so, it's not always from an exclusionary lens. It's also just protecting people's time and energy. But choices in the solutions it's critical to involve the voices of the people who will be using that day to day, because if you don't have their voice at the table, what I've seen throughout my entire career is that the database becomes then punishment for doing your job. You go and you do your job, and you do it on paper, or you do it wherever, because the database that was chosen doesn't actually support your work. And then you turn around and have to key all the information in to comply with whatever you need. And it's one of the biggest hurdles that I have seen continuous in the nonprofit sector, is that happens over and over again. And really it's oversimplifying to say, just get your case managers in the conversation, because that's not the only consideration for a purchase of this, of this magnitude. But it's often one that's left out. And it's often one that can avoid a lot of, pain and heartache over time, or even switching systems.
Thank you, Jen. All right, Sherry, over to you. Any common challenges that you see nonprofit professionals face when adopting new case management systems, and how do you recommend we overcome these hurdles?
Yeah, I think the first challenge goes back to one of our earlier questions, making sure before you select a case management system that your organization has done that work to align kind of what you want the technology to do, what do you want it to track, what do you know, like start with the end in mind, because especially depending on what technology solutions you pick, someone in the technology space, unless it's a specific solution designed for your industry, they're going to build you what you tell them to build you. And if you haven't, to Jen's point, like you haven't engaged your case managers, you haven't really thought through what do you need it, what's the outcome you want as part of this technology, you may get something that isn't meeting your needs. But let's assume that has been done. Another thing I see is obviously adopting a new technology system is change management. It requires change management. We don't like to do things differently, even if they're better for us, right? We don't, just that's a natural human desire. So if you're a leader of a technology transformation, I talk about embrace the messy middle. I don't know if you can tell, but like my wall behind me is not finished. We're in the middle of a remodel, and it's like we are living in the messy middle. And then when you're going to adopt new technology, what we often see is that there is this moment of messy middle where people start to try the new thing and then they start to grumble because it's new and it's changed and they haven't learned it yet. And as the leader, it's your job to shepherd your employees through that and remind them of what will be on the other side. And I think that's where sometimes projects go awry because there's not enough support and encouragement and empathy to get people over to the other side.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Before we hear from Stephanie, I want to let our audience know we have another poll where we've asked you all, what do you find to be the most difficult aspect of case management? If you'd like to share your experience, where you're coming to this conversation from, go fill out that poll now. All right, Stephanie, thoughts on common challenges and how we can avoid them or get past them?
Sherry had mentioned before that we have a gap when it comes to humans in nonprofit. And when we look at these challenges, oftentimes we are looking at capacity. So what we have to look at is, does our team actually have the capacity to be able to do these things? Because if we are not taking into account the time it actually takes to do these things, we are failing our teams. We are failing the community because it's not done by magic. We do have to learn these things. Are we putting enough time into training and professional development? Because it's not simply, here's the new thing we're doing. Figure it out. See you later. Which has been done before, and it is terrible. Please don't do that. Nobody wins. So when we look at capacity, when we are looking at if we have the time, let's not continue to hang our hats into the idiom that is often used that says, we're building the plane as we fly it. Let's have a plan. Let's have the capacity to be able to allow our teams to do that, because not only will it make it more successful, we're also going to see our teams be a little bit happier, and then we don't lose institutional knowledge and people are more likely to stay, and that snowballs into a whole other thing about work-life balance and different day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, checking in on that poll again, we asked you, what do you find to be the most difficult aspect of case management? 50% of you said consistent communication, 33% of you said maintaining accurate records, and 17% of you said other, and that you're going to let us know in the chat. So I'll keep my eye out for that, but thank you all for filling that out. I want to give my official reminder that this is the absolute best time to get your questions in. Otherwise, I'm going to ask all of my own questions, and I'm going to leave this session so informed and knowledgeable about what I wanted to learn, but I will prioritize your questions. So if there's something that you're like, I can't believe they've not addressed that yet, please let us know in the chat or questions tab, or maybe a follow-up question that you have. This would be the time to submit it. All right, Stephania, I have another question for you. In the context of case management, how can our nonprofit strike the right balance between standardized processes and individualized client support?
So we have to come back to the basics. So we have to come back to our organizational values. By letting our values dictate how we run everything, how we're providing support, how we are looking at case management. If we always come back to the organizational values, you're going to find that it becomes easier and it becomes just the norm by centering everything into the values. By having values in which we train the staff, where we have these protocols set up, it makes it kind of a non-issue if you structure these things correctly and always root everything into the values, because then it becomes very woven into the fabric of the organization.
Thank you. All right, Jen, over to you. Thoughts on striking that balance between standardized and individualized?
Yeah, just picking up on that theme of sort of weaving it in, and also thinking about the change management that we've been talking about, having the space for those conversations that arise, right? Because when you've got the plan and you know sort of what your delivery is, again, from the lens of a technologist, my job is to implement standards, right? So the one of the most important things to know about technology in this space is that many times, and many of your case management tools particularly, are designed to be flexible, which means that they are actually reflecting the sort of technological enforcement of decisions your organization has made or could make. And so looking for the space where if people are feeling constrained or feeling as if they're not able to deliver on those values, they're not able to weave those values in to their daily work, is there a barrier in place? Is there something that we've inadvertently set up that we didn't mean to, that's standing in the way of that, right? And that comes out in case managers saying, well, I want to serve someone this way, but I can't because the screen won't let me. Oh, well, maybe that's a fixable problem, right? Is it in your organizational values that the screen, should let you? Or is it an opportunity for dialogue, which also is perhaps part of your organizational values for, I understand why you might feel that way. I absolutely empathize with that, but here's the reason that that's there, right? So it's that, kind of pulling on the capacity thread as well, and that ongoing training and conversation. It's not just about a one-time training. I agree. Please don't ever do that. That never works. But when you're delivering solutions, even if it's just paper and pencil, it's an ongoing dialogue because things drift over time. As you're, encountering new situations, whatever you're using might not have anticipated that. And if you don't have room to have that conversation to bring it back to your values, then you can't explore what could we do? What could we change? Should we change it? So, that's a harder, more ongoing sort of a commitment that takes capacity. But, I have seen that work to help navigate those spaces.
Thank you, Jen. All right, Sherry, final thoughts on how we can strike that balance between standardization and individualization.
Yeah, I'll sound like a broken record because I'll go back to that logic model. And to Jen's point, most, at least modern case management solutions will allow you to configure it to match your own language, to match your own workflows. And so that's number one, kind of taking your workflows and making sure that your values and your words and your processes are embedded into your case management platforms. But I think there is a huge value in standardization because that's how we get analytics. Without some standardization, it's impossible to be able to analyze the data and tell the story that you're putting into your case management platforms. So it's that mix of making sure you can have the quantitative standardization. So the set, fields and values that are going to be allow you to calculate counts and percentages and averages and all that great stuff. But then, a open text field, so that if I'm writing case notes, I can check off boxes that are going to be calculated, but at the same time, I have open text fields that will allow me to record some of that qualitative nuance that I need to know about that individual and reference later. So I think that's a good balance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sherry. All right. This is the final time I'm going to say it, but submit your questions now, or I'm going to ask all of my own. But I was looking at the polls that were coming in, and Sherry, I have a question for you based on one of the answers. 29% of people said that maintaining accurate records was a difficult part of case management for them. And I know we've touched about a lot of pieces of that, but I was wondering if you have any particular advice or kind of words of encouragement for people who are struggling with those accurate record maintenance.
Yeah, well, I think that's where your case management systems should enable you to have that accountability and that accurate record maintenance. So, and creating a culture of accountability is so key, because we can give you the best, most blinged out technology in the world, but if your case managers aren't logging in and recording their work and effort, then garbage in, garbage out, you won't get what you need to know. So I think it's creating a culture within your organization where managers are regularly, and great case management systems should allow this opportunity, where managers can log in and view what their staff have been recording. And so if you're noticing that, you only saw 3 people last week, that doesn't seem correct. Like, you can have those conversations, and it's giving you that visibility to reinforce that data culture.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Anyone else want to jump in with any thoughts about maintaining accurate records? Jen?
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of follow on what Sherry's been talking about, and kind of think about or encourage people to think about, where possible, aligning what you're asking your staff to do with your outputs. Because I know when we're doing a logic model, that's the whole point of the exercise, right? We're being focused. We're asking, only what do we need to do to achieve the outcomes we're trying to achieve. And yet I see a lot of times in data systems, then we start collecting all the other things. And we get some sort of kitchen sink stuff, or the junk drawer mentality of or we call it data hoarding sometimes. And I get it, because we don't ever know what a funder is going to ask us. But I think that the more that you can bring these conversations closer together in your technology specifically, and that is a dialogue, right? Because if your case managers need to record narratives to do their work, but then the outcome of that narrative is something that is structured, that needs reporting on, is there any room that you can negotiate in there to make it a natural outflow, to make sure that the screens flow in a way that captures that numeric data, so that it's little design friction points that often I've seen lead to the biggest but most solvable difficulties in capturing data. And so if you can ask the questions about, can we bring this closer together? Can we sort of design something that works better for us? A lot of times you can actually help eliminate some of those struggles.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jen. We have had a question submitted, but I want to give you all some time to think about it. So I'm going to bring it up, then we're going to go to a different question, then we'll come back. But someone in the chat asked if you have any management systems you can recommend for youth mentoring programs. And I think what I'll add, if you don't want to give a particular recommendation, of maybe some recommendations about where to start looking, how to research what's going to be the best management system. But before we get to that, Estefania, I was hoping you could maybe talk a little bit about, for the people who said that consistent communication in their case management was the most difficult part, any advice or particular words of encouragement?
So that is not just a case management problem. If you are seeing consistent communication as a potential issue, it means that it exists in other places of your organization. And the easiest way to look at it, or to start to overcome that, is by having an open door policy for communication. Oftentimes, we've seen that people, case managers or community members, might not follow up when they're uncertain about something because of that anxiety that comes around with, I don't know who to ask. But if we have an open door policy or a general inbox for questions where you can send these things to, it starts to become the norm to communicate. And management needs to set these examples to be over communicators, because people will follow your example. When you are communicating, when you are setting these norms, you have to let people know that what it's expected, because sometimes they don't know. I've seen case managers that are just so busy in the community, they don't worry about what's happening at the office because they're busy, they're doing it. And they might not understand why it's necessary. So by whoever's in charge over communicating why it's necessary and imperative that they do these things, it's going to start to change the culture.
Thank you so much, Stephania. Anyone else want to jump in terms of communication? Otherwise, we'll keep moving. All right, Jen, over to you. Any thoughts on either specific management systems you recommend for youth mentoring, or any strategies for kind of starting that research process if they're looking for a system?
Sure. So because we work with Salesforce, here's my obligatory plug for the most customizable thing I've ever worked with. And now I'll move on. I would say start though, because it's not for everybody, right? And everyone knows that. It's absolutely not for everyone. What I've seen to be most effective is starting with your peers and colleagues. People who are delivering similar programs like yours. Do you have professional groups? Can you tap into a group like N10, which is a general technology group for all nonprofits, and ask, like, we perform this specific type of thing, and here are some examples of the activities we need to do, right? Because to Sherry's point that she made earlier, you can't choose a software unless you know what you need it to do. So the more sort of specific in terms of the tasks or functionalities, but those tasks and functionalities often are, if not unique, maybe uniquely combined to certain types of program delivery, I found. And so really finding what actually is effective and works for people in similar industries or doing, sort of similar program delivery can be just invaluable when sort of looking at where to start.
Thank you so much, Jen. Sherry, anything that you would add here in terms of figuring out how to identify what system is going to be right for you?
Sure, absolutely. And again, I'm biased. I would say check out Sure Impact. But on our website, sureimpact.com, we do have a case management buyer guide, which might be a great resource for you because it does talk about the different things to think about or different checkboxes that you would want to consider as you are doing research on the best case management platform for you. I also echo that N10 would be a great resource. If you do go to the conference this year, I'll be there and I'd love to meet you. But it is a great place to learn about all the different specific nonprofit tech platforms that are out there to serve you.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Stephania, next question over to you. For people who are on this call or watching the recording who are maybe just feeling a little overwhelmed and are like not sure where to start and are a little stressed, what small change or kind of starting point would you recommend in terms of improving their case management practices?
Well, first of all, we're going to breathe. You got this. And the second thing is, you have to figure out what's on fire right now. You're going to tell me everything's on fire right now, but there are some fires that you can schedule to a later time. So to be able to start to make a small change, you have to figure out what needs your immediate attention right now, and are you able to fix it? So as an example, we were just talking about the tools. So if it's on fire that you don't have a case management tool, that is on fire right now because you have to find the correct tool. And then you're able to start processing that. Have you made your must-have list? Have you made your nice-to-have list? Do you have a budget for it? Because we're nonprofits. Budgets sometimes are, here's my hope. That is my budget. So when we are looking at what you can do is take a breath, you got this, but then figure out what needs your immediate attention and are you able to take care of it? Because something might need your immediate attention. We have no money. That is something immediate, but you might not be able to fix that immediately. So what's on fire? And you got it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sherry, I'm going to bring the same question over to you. Any words of encouragement or thoughts for people who are maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all that they need to accomplish?
Yeah, my favorite advice, it's what I've used to guide my whole entire career, is just keep taking the next step. And, set that, whatever that vision is, whatever that goal is that you're looking for, have that, know that, and then ask yourself if you have to break down every single hour, do that. Because I've been in moments where I felt so overwhelmed that it's like, I just have to focus on what I need to do in the next 60 minutes. But just ask yourself, what is that next right step for me to get to that goal today? And take care of that. And then the next hour, ask yourself again, what is the next right step? And we're trying to define what are those next right steps. I think about all the restraining forces that are keeping you from achieving your goals and all of the supporting forces that are helping you achieve your goals. And your whole next right step should be, what can I eliminate one or two of those restraining forces? What would I have to do? Is it make a phone call? Is it send an email? Is it to delegate it to someone else? And then the supporting forces is, who can I ask to help me? Or what can I leverage to help? I guess that's some really practical advice because I know we're all feeling very overwhelmed. You've got really important work to do, but just keep going. And if you just keep kind of taking that next right step attitude, you'll be amazed at how far you get in a quarter.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, Jen, words of encouragement, steps that we should be taking if we're feeling overwhelmed.
Oh, wow. So how relatable. We are all feeling overwhelmed. I absolutely echo, just breathe. You've got this. One step at a time. I think focusing on, for me, I find that if I focus on the things that I can control right away, that's of course very pragmatic. Sometimes though, we need a little bit of, we need that, the same effect of like putting something on your to-do list just to cross it off. So if like prioritize yourself, right? Set the stuff down that can wait until tomorrow, because you're going to come back tomorrow. The work's going to come back tomorrow. But maybe leave yourself an easy thing for tomorrow morning, right? Like an easy way back to warm your brain up, something fun that you don't mind doing. Maybe make that call to your favorite client first thing in the morning to kind of re-engage you, the thing that you look forward to, right? I think we so often get focused on the stuff we have to do and we let it get stressed out and whatever, that we forget that there are some things that we like to do. And that's good, that's okay, and that we should embrace those things. So leave yourself a little treat for the morning to kind of help re-engage.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen. All right. I have two more questions for each of our panelists, and then we'll have to start wrapping up. The first one is going to be about misconceptions. I feel like in the nonprofit space, there's always some things that our nonprofit thought leaders are like, if we could just put that to rest, we would be so much better off. So I'm wondering if there's anything related to case management or general nonprofit operations that you're like, can we just leave that in 2023? We don't need that in 2024. Sherry, can I start with you?
Yes, thank you for asking this question. For goodness sake, can we please leave the overhead myth behind in this sector? Because obviously a lot of boards, and I started this too, they're like, oh, no, we can't pay for that. We can't afford that because, I'm speaking specifically to case management, because of, the overhead myth. It's like, no, no, no. We must invest in our infrastructure to deliver on our mission. So if I have one thing, I hope it is a programmatic cost. Put it in your program budget. It is not an overhead. It is the cost of doing business.
Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, Jen, thoughts on things that we need to leave behind in 2023?
Here's my favorite myth or misconception, that switching data systems will solve your problems. Probably not. Probably not. Because probably the problem is a little bit further upstream. Maybe you need to take a look at that logic model. Maybe you need to do some planning. Maybe you need to do some capacity building. Maybe you don't need to track all the things you think you need to track. Sometimes switching a data system will fix your problem. But in my experience with lots and lots of projects, I would say I have seen that maybe 10% of the time. The rest of the time, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jen. All right, Estefania, thoughts on what we need to leave in 2023?
So I want to say two things. The first thing is that data is not a top priority. Data needs to be our top priority. We need to bring that attitude into 2024, because with data, we can do so much. Data has so much power. And the other thing is, case managers don't have infinite capacity. There are so many organizations that keep continuing to pile everything onto case managers because they got it, but they don't have infinite capacity. And we have to take that into account going into the future, because nonprofits are continuing to lose talented people. So we have to do better with it.
Thank you so much. All right, I have my one final question, but for our audience members who maybe have been keeping something in, they're like, I can't believe they didn't address that, or it's a really personal question to something related to your organization. I want to get your questions answered. So we will momentarily be dropping in the chat from the Team NX Unite username a survey that you can fill out where you can let us know what lingering questions you have or who you think could best answer it. And we will make sure to connect you with the panelists to answer your question so that you can leave this session feeling very satisfied. All right, Stephanie, I'm going to have you start us off with our final question of the day. It's a pretty big and broad one, but it's my favorite way to end a panel. What do you see as the future of case management, and how can our nonprofits get ahead today?
Automation. I know. It's sticky. It's really sticky because automation can do so many things, but it's gotten a bad rap. So I think that the future is going to be automation, but we have to learn how to use these tools. We can't just simply throw it into the void and expect that it's going to work for us. We have to be able to learn how it works to be able to make it work for us. And it's not going away. It can make your life easier if we do it correctly. It can make your life harder if we do it incorrectly. So I think it's going to be the future, because we got to use technology if we have it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, Sherry, over to you. Thoughts on the future and how we can get ahead today?
Yeah, I think we touched a little bit on it. I'm surprised I didn't talk more about it in my answers to the questions, but kind of this movement from outputs to communicating and measuring outcomes. Funders are definitely requiring more from nonprofits in terms of not just what did you do with our dollars, but how did you change lives in changing circumstances. And I think that if you don't have a case management solution that's providing that impact and outcome management, it might be a disservice to you. So making sure that your organization is preparing your data collection strategy for those types of metrics and insights now is going to position you to be much more competitive in the future. And I think automation and AI and all that stuff is going to become important, but we know that the nonprofit sector is often lagging behind the private sector industry. And I think probably AI will be true for our sector as well, just because there's some catch up we have to do.
Thank you so much, Sherry. All right, Jen, final thoughts on the future and how we can get ahead today.
So, as Sherry was saying, I think everyone wants to talk about AI, but AI is not magic. There's a ton of technical capacity required, and frankly, it's expensive. So that's in the future. But the tools that can allow the automation that I'm so sorry, Estefania was mentioning is critical, right? And the kinds of dialogues about not just accepting the lag actually can benefit the nonprofit sector in a really interesting way that I don't think we take advantage of, in that corporate often is early adopter, and we're racing to do a thing before we ask if we should. And as a nonprofit sector, we are much more focused on asking, should we use that? What does it mean for us? Is it equitable to use these algorithms in these ways? And so advancing these dialogues and being really thoughtful about our automations, I think, is the future for the social sector. At least I hope so.
Thank you so much, Jen. All right, with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a huge thank you to our panelists. I know if we were in person, there'd be a round of applause. So just know that I'm sharing that energy through the screen today. I do also want to give a big thank you to our audience, whether you joined us live or you're watching the recording. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us today. And if you were here live and you were in the chat, great to see you. And with the polls, I do also want to encourage you to attend our future panel sessions. We have a packed winter and spring of sessions ahead of us. So many that you can't even imagine it. So if you want to join us for future sessions, keep your eye out on the NX Unite website, the NX Unite LinkedIn, to make sure you're not missing anything that could be relevant to you and your team. We also have an amazing library of past sessions that you can access. So keep your eye out, join us for future sessions. And again, a huge thank you for being here with us today. Thank you again to our panelists. I hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Thank you.